Welcome to Cedars Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Tyler Weaver, and I'm acting as your worship associate today alongside your minister, Zachary Vinson. And we're very pleased today to be filming at the Island School. Zachary will talk a little bit more about that later. But before we start, let's pause to acknowledge that members of our congregation occupy the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of Coast Salish tribes. The homelands of the Suquamish, Duwamish, Clallam, and Chimicum people were ceded under duress through the Point Elliott and Point No Point treaties. We are grateful guests on these lands and affirm indigenous sovereignty, both past and present. This acknowledgement does not substitute for the need to build authentic relationships with modern-day members of these tribes and to learn about their living culture and history. Our faith community is sustained by the generosity of our members. Your contribution will nourish the spiritual growth of our community through weekly worship and ongoing programs that cultivate connection, belonging, sharing, and caring. Included in the video description and displayed on the screen below is information to make a contribution to Cedars through our PayPal account. Please take time either now or later in the service to make a contribution to help sustain Cedars. Your gifts are greatly appreciated. Cedars is committed to being a welcoming and inclusive community. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, and skin tones that come together in your uniqueness, we welcome you. In all the ways you experience and express gender, and the beauty of who and how you love, we welcome you. With all the religious and ethical traditions that inform your spiritual life, we welcome you. You are invited to join us today and always with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. Today's service is about the idea of having someone else's back. Later in this service, you're going to see me and Reverend Zachary demonstrating this concept in an improv performance. In the context of improv, the idea is that to have a scene that works, it's vital that each performer support the other's ideas so they can work collaboratively and help move the scene forward when others have limited ideas about what to do. But before we get there, I want to talk briefly about having other people's backs in everyday life. Having someone's back, that's a phrase that gets used a lot, but I'm not sure we often pause to think about what it means. The phrase is believed to have originated in World War II to describe the military practice of having one battalion protecting and supporting a battalion that was in retreat. In other words, you have someone's back if you're working to protect them when they're at their most vulnerable. It's not about second guessing why they're vulnerable or trying to explain away why they're vulnerable or trying to make them forget that they're vulnerable. Instead, it's about helping them through that time of vulnerability and getting them to the other side alive and hopefully undamaged. And I think it's something we can all be a little bit better at. I think we've all had times in our lives when we've needed someone to help us through a situation that seemed unmanageable at the time. I certainly have. Several years ago, I made a mistake, a bad mistake. I did not fully comprehend the gravity of it until sometime later, a couple years later, when events forced me to look back on it, address it, and then tell people about my mistake. There were numerous ramifications for me, my family, my friends, the place I worked, and many others. And for a long time, I was in a deep state of distress over the situation. And there was a lot of pain and a lot of self-examination and reflection. And to be honest, the wounds are still there, not completely healed. I'm not exaggerating to say that I would not have made it through that experience intact if I had not had several close friends and family members who had my back. They did not act as my personal apologists or encourage me to explain away what I had done or help me drown my sorrows. They were there, regardless of the circumstances, to make sure I didn't falter any more than was necessary. To remind me of what I meant to them, to remind me that one mistake did not define who I was. It probably would have been easier for those people to have simply backed away and not involved themselves with the mess that I was at the time. There were certainly those who made that choice, and I honestly don't hold that against them. I do, however, owe a very large debt to the people who had my back. As part of repaying my debt to those people, I've tried in recent years to pay more attention to when those around me are faltering and might benefit from support, and then give them that support if it's welcome. Because nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. And sometimes the world overwhelms us even though we have done nothing wrong. It is then when we are most at risk of losing ourselves to the circumstances of our lives that we can use a helping hand and a caring heart to see us through to the other side of our troubles. So today, I dedicate the lighting of our chalice to having the back of those you care about who are in their worst moments, not because those people are perfect, but because they need our help.
As we come together to worship, we remind ourselves to treat all people kindly because we are one family, to take good care of the earth because it is our home, and to live lives full of love and goodness because that is how we will all become the best that we can be.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me
It has been a little while since we've been in this space here at the Island School. And as we are preparing for our return to in-person services later this month on October 24th, we're here this week doing our recording to test out some of our audio and video equipment in the space and get a better idea of how we will interface in this space and move towards having a hybrid service option. It's a very exciting time, but as you can see, the room is a little stark right now. And that's because we need all of you, again, to show up, to come and help us turn this gym here at the Island School into our Cedars sanctuary on Sunday mornings. And so consider this your invitation to join with us, to come back together in community here at the Island School as we prepare to enter our in-person services. I do want to also remind you that as we make this transition, at first we're not going to be doing every Sunday in person. Part of this is we're still figuring out some logistics of the space here. It's been a while, and with the COVID procedures, we have some things that we need to figure out. And so to give ourselves a little bit of grace, we are going to be alternating every other Sunday between virtual and in-person until we can get a working hybrid model where people can both participate in person and online. With that said, if anyone is interested in joining in our audio team now that we're back in person, we could use a few more people to join on Sunday mornings to help us with the soundboard, to do the audio tests, and hopefully even figure out how to get all that stuff to work together to go into a live stream. The final announcement that I want to make before sharing a few gratitudes is just to say, you might notice I am wearing a mask. I'm wearing a slightly different microphone than we normally have used when we're recording our services or in person. Partly, the masks are something we're just going to have to get used to for a while. The Island School, since they are a school, part of their policy that they're required is that everyone who comes into the building must wear a mask at all times. That mask must cover your entire mouth and nose, and that includes myself, any worship associates or other people who are participating in the services. This policy also means that when we work with musicians and the way that music happens in services is going to be a little different. We're figuring out the specific details of all of that, but currently we will not be allowed to sing in this space, which is sad. But I think given all of the joy and excitement of coming back together and knowing that we're doing these things, wearing the masks, limiting our how much we're breathing into the air, that we're doing it to keep each other safe and healthy, that hopefully we can learn to live with these changes in a way that that works for us. So those are the announcements. There'll be more details in the weeks ahead. Keep an eye on the beacon. The board and I will work to keep everyone in the loop about what is happening. And we're very excited to be gathering back together after so long not being able to see each other face to face. Quickly too, just a few gratitudes I do want to name. The first is to the members of our Board of Trustees. There have been a lot of meetings lately. There's a lot of logistics happening, plans going into place, negotiating arrangements. And the board has been doing an amazing job holding all of those details and responsibilities. And so much gratitude to the board. Also to all of the folks who are participating in the reopening effort. As I said, so many details and more than any one or two or three people could attend to. And so those folks, much gratitude. To the members of our tech team, gratitude to you for all the work that you've done to get us to this point through all this virtual services and to the work that you continue to do as we transition into what will be a hybrid church format. And finally, a gratitude to the members of the Faith Formation Committee. This committee has not always been active in the last 18 months or so, and recently, with Carrie Schmidt as the chair, the committee is reconstituting itself and beginning to put in place some plans to make sure that there's support for families, for parents, beyond just what happens on Sunday morning. So to all of these people and to the many more, I say thank you. And with that, would like to invite us into our time of worship with this reflection by my colleague, Reverend Karen G. Johnson. She writes, "The word liturgy is a fancy word meaning the formation of a religious service. Its etymology tells us that it means the work of the people. Liturgy, the work of the people. In many Unitarian Universalist contexts, the verb worship is intransitive. We do not worship something or someone. We claim the act of worship as a raising up of that which is worthy. There is magic afoot, and reason, and ritual, and intellectual rigor, compassion, mutual care, delight, skepticism, deep comfort, disappointment, tears, and laughter, challenge. It's all there. It's our Sunday service. Don't look too closely. Behind the curtain, you might notice a dropped line, a skipped element, on purpose or perhaps accidentally, a missed cue. One part going long, another going short. Someone not quite on their game, a baton passed and dropped. But then again, do look closely. See teamwork at play. Adjustments made with a simple word or gesture, a deft drop, an even defter catch, a kind word remembered, a gentle laughter at oneself, a collective forbearance, an assumed forgiveness, a truly it did not matter. Sparks of synergy, moments of grace, moments of grace. This they see too. This they experience, hearts expanded. Magic is afoot, bundled in the work of the people, raising up that which is worthy. Come, let us worship together. For our faith formation moment today, Tyler Weaver and I are going to be engaging in a little more improv as we did a few weeks ago. This is an improv game, a theater game that was designed to help people learn about the many different perspectives that can be held around the same situation. In this game, I'm going to tell a story, and then Tyler and I will alternate back and forth, telling the story from a different perspective each time, incorporating new details and expanding upon the scene with different characters. And so, I want to invite you all to join me in affirming the motto of today's service as Tyler and I begin this improv scene together. I want to invite you to join me in saying, I've got your back. So, a few years ago, I was visiting my grandmother, and we went to the park with my cousin Tyler. And this was one of those parks that had a boardwalk that went out over this marshland. And it was mostly mud and cattails, but this boardwalk snaked its way through. It was a pretty hot, humid day in northern Illinois. My grandmother, my cousin, and I were not the only people out. The boardwalk was full of all sorts of people. There was a few people rollerblading, which seemed a little risky to me. There's people walking their dogs. But the thing I really remember that day was the frog watching that we participated in, or really what happened due to the frog watching. So there's all these little frogs down in the mud kind of under this boardwalk, and as my grandma, Tyler, and I are walking, we kept pausing to look at these little frogs jumping. Super interesting, super entertaining, and I think it was kind of fun to have my grandmother and I both with my little cousin watching these frogs. People keep going by. They're also watching the frogs. It was the thing to do that day at the park. Well, kept walking on the boardwalk and got to a place where my grandmother bent down to see a frog down in the mud on the ground. And as she bent down, I remember turning and seeing my cousin Tyler's face light up as he turned and pushed my grandmother off of the boardwalk head first into the mud.
So, this was a few years ago, and my cousin Zachary came to visit. And I remember he was older and, frankly, kind of a nerd. And we were at Grandma's house, and, I was like, oh, Zachary coming over? Oh, man. And, I wanted to play video games, frankly, that day. That was it was a weekend, and Grandma said, no, Zachary wants to go to the park. I was like, oh. There's going to be millions of people at the park, and but we went. I remember we went, and yep, it was full of people on this boardwalk, and Zachary kept watching these frogs that were jumping, and I was like, I had an appointment to play Call of Duty with my friends at 2 o'clock, and it was getting on, it was about 1:30, and, how long are we going to stand and watch these frogs? And, Zachary kept talking, look at the frogs, look at them jump. And, okay. So, I'll admit it, I was a little bit irritated. He kept getting Grandma's attention and getting her to look at the frogs too. And, she bent over, and it was an opportunity. I admit that maybe I shouldn't have taken it, and I might have been a little bit perturbed by the situation, but I think I pushed her into the mud. And look, we all have a memory now, and it was a great time. So, what's the problem?
So it was my first summer. It was actually my only summer. I didn't live very long. But I remember the place used to be full of water when I first was hatched and came out as a tadpole. And in the springtime, I swam through all the cattails. And eventually, though, as I got a little older, as frogs do, and I lost my tail, and I began to hop, as frogs also do, there came summer. And when the summer came, it got really hot, which, I'll be honest, as a frog, I kind of liked the heat. It was nice to bask in the sun, but it kept getting hot day after day. And the water that I used to swim in, the water that I liked to climb out of and bask in the sun, but jump back in when I needed to cool off, eventually, all evaporated. And all that was left was this mud. Now, I don't mind the mud as a frog, but it was hot, and, mud isn't as much fun to try to have to swim through as water. Anyway, this one particularly hot day, I remember all of these people walking through the marshland and the boardwalk. I remember thinking, that's weird. What are all these people doing here in this frog marsh? Well, I tried to ignore it and go about my business, but people kept stopping to watch me. And sometimes I'd get uncomfortable and I'd hop a little bit. And sometimes I would stay really still and just pretend that they couldn't see me. And that's what I was doing when it happened. The thing that caused me not to live so long. I was sitting there, and this woman, her big head with poofy hair, came really close, bent down, and stared me directly in the eyes. She was calling the others over and trying to point at me. Well, as I sat there trying not to move, trying to pretend that she couldn't see me, suddenly that face got closer and closer and closer, and smash. And that's how I ended up here.
What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul? Of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down, beneath my sorrow's ground, friends to me gathered round. Oh my soul, friends to me gathered round. Oh my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends, all pain and sorrow meant, with thanks unto the end I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end I will sing. What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul.
Let us begin by taking a breath. Allowing ourselves to become grounded, centered together in this moment. Centered together with these words: I've got your back. How does it feel to hear these words? Listen. Really listen with your entire being. I've got your back. I've got your back. You're not alone. We have each other. We have community for support, for guidance and help, for fun and joy. We have each other. We have each other's back. Say it with me. I've got your back. I've got your back. I've got your back. Really mean it as you say it. I've got your back. I've got your back. I've got your back. Notice the way that these words of support, these words of encouragement feel in your body. I've got your back. I've got your back. I've got your back. How do they speak to your soul? I've got your back. I've got your back. I've got your back. Let these words remind you that you are not alone. When things get hard and chaos ensues, we have one another. When laughter makes your belly ache, we laugh in the presence of one another. When tears of loss flow, we need not hold our grief alone. Remember, in all the times of your life, that you are not alone, that we are here for each other, that we've got each other's back. Amen. I've got your back. When someone says, I've got your back, and really means it, what they're communicating is their support. Essentially, what this phrase means is, I support you, or you're not alone in this endeavor. This expression of support is a key feature of improvisation. For many improv troupes, it's common to take a moment before going on stage for members to share this phrase with one another among the group. Improv is a type of performance that requires communication and risk-taking. And in such a setting, support and trust become crucial. That's why we say, I've got your back. A few weeks ago, in another service, we explored the concept of yes and from improv and saw how this open-minded attitude leads to new possibilities. When you add the dimension of trust that the phrase, I've got your back, brings to the equation, suddenly you have a recipe for collaborative exploration. These two features, yes and I've got your back, paired with our imagination through the suspension of disbelief, create a relational context in which people are liberated to take risks and try each other and support each other in the act of risk-taking, in the trying. I've got your back. This is a concept that encourages us to respond to what is being communicated from our partner, rather than simply reacting to the environmental factors of the situation. It's a lens that focuses us on supporting what is happening, rather than entering into a competition or game of one-upsmanship. When I was first introduced to the idea of I've got your back in my improv class, it felt, I'll be honest, a little corny. In the Zoom class we were in, the instructors asked us to point and say in unison, I've got your back, to every participant. The result of this request was a cacophony of sound and pointing as we all pointed and spoke to the others on the screen. I've got your back, I've got your back, I've got your back, I've got your back, I've got your back. You get the idea. Each week, we performed this ritual at the start of our time together. And I found that as I got to know members of this class, as we started to build a deeper relationship and get to know each other, the corniness of this phrase wore off. Soon this way of starting our time together became something I really looked forward to. I think it was due to the foundation of support that this phrase helped establish among us. It got to the point that when we said the words and pointed on the Zoom screen to one of our classmates, it felt like we really meant it. I felt like these people who I didn't know in any other context were really there to support me. And I felt like I was there to support them. I've got your back. Improv can be rather embarrassing at times. Often you're thrown into a scene with little to guide you except a set of rules governing a particular game. And sometimes you don't even get to know the rules and have to figure them out as you go. In such a setting, having established trust between partners is very important. It's crucial. It's so important. And I want to take a moment now to help illustrate this idea of mutual support expressed in the phrase. And so to do this, Tyler and I are going to enter into an improv scene together. This scene is a type of scene or game known as a guessing game. It's a game in which one person knows something and the other person doesn't and has to guess what the first person knows. In this case, the game involves Tyler interviewing me for a job, a position. But the catch is, I don't know what position I'm being interviewed for. I have to take clues and listen and guess. But in this game, despite Tyler knowing and me not, we're not trying to trip each other up or somehow outsmart each other. I don't know, Tyler, I might win. But rather, we're trying to listen and respond in a way that allows us to arrive at the correct answer. In this case, to guess what job I'm being interviewed for. And so we're going to give that a try and see how it goes. But before we enter this scene, I want to invite all of you to join me in saying that important phrase I've said so many times in this service already. I've got your back.
Well, hello. Go ahead and have a seat. So you're Scott?
Yeah, Scott.
Okay,
Scott,
so
Scott Greeley.
yeah, this is a long resume, Scott.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't usually get resumes quite this long for this kind of job.
I have a lot of experience. What can I say?
Yeah, well, why don't you tell me a little bit about that experience and why it applies to this job?
Well, I think, working with people like I did at the circus, like it just seems a very applicable skill for this job. And my time working at the nursery with the children and the plants together, I just feel
there's a lot of cleanup in both of those professions.
There is, and would you say cleanup is helpful in this position?
Well, of course. I mean,
yeah, that's why I applied.
you do know what you're applying for.
Yes, of course I know what I'm applying for. I mean, so I'm an excellent cleaner, and beyond cleaning, I organize. I'm very organized too. And
oh yeah, that's good.
Okay,
I mean, we don't really need that too much, but
I just wanted you to know it's one of my strengths. Like a lot of people say, Scott Greeley, organized and clean. That's what they say about me. I mean, could you maybe just tell me what am I working with other people on a regular basis?
Not so much. It's kind of a lonely job. I mean,
Yeah.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, I'm good with lonely.
Yeah.
I'm a lonely guy. I'm lonely a lot.
How's your gag reflex?
Not good.
Oh, okay. I mean,
Is that a problem?
well, it can be. I mean,
I have a strong stomach.
okay, but you gag a lot.
I mean, smells and things can make me gag, but that's everyone does that.
Yeah, look, I mean, we can get you the right kind of mask.
Okay.
I mean, if this is,
Yeah,
but,
yeah. I'm flexible too. They say Scott Greeley, flexible guy.
I mean, I also have a strong gag reflex, and you don't see me working out in the field. I'm strictly an office guy, HR.
yeah.
Because I mean, I actually went out there a few times, and it was, I mean, you're going to see some stuff.
So, could you tell me a little bit about like what sort of hours I would expect? Like,
Well, it's usually pretty regular.
Regular.
Sometimes, when you have a big concert, there's going to be a lot of extra work.
yeah,
Because there's just more people in the area doing what people do.
yeah, I get it. When you
Yeah.
have a gig, there's a lot of pressure, a lot of demands. Like,
Yep.
And
Look, sometimes we have to call people in. If somebody, puts some jeans down their toilet, there's going to be, there's going to be some work that needs to be done.
That's okay because I've always felt I would make an excellent plumber. And I just really feel like if you're
Well-
looking for a plumber, I could be the right fit for you.
Well, that's great. I don't know that we have any openings for plumbers at the moment, but we certainly do have some, out in the field. Now,
Could you describe the field? I want to make sure I'm picturing.
well, it kind of depends. I mean, we have the main facility where we've got the big pools and the holding ponds,
Yeah.
and then out in the then we also have out in the out in the field, just like the outdoor concert sites, block parties. You're gonna have to go and deal with that
Hey,
material.
I mean, it's not an easy job, but
Yeah.
someone has to clean those porta potties. And I will tell you that as someone who has worked in a lot of fecal-related fields,
Yeah, I mean the circus and the nursery.
circus, the nursery, as someone who's worked in a lot of these fields, just give me a pair of gloves, a good mask, and I can clean those porta potties.
Well, hey, great. That's great.
Awesome.
Look, we'll probably be giving you a call soon. So, look,
Sounds good. And remember, Scott Greeley, he cleans porta potties.
all right,
That's what they
great,
say.
great.
And it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. As you probably noticed in that scene, it took a little while for me to get oriented and on the right track. I had no idea what position I was being interviewed for, but eventually, through listening and responding to what Tyler was communicating, rather than the stress of the situation, the stress of not knowing, I was able to arrive at the correct answer. The answer that I was being interviewed to be a sanitation worker or porta potty cleaner. I want you to think about this idea of I've got your back, of communicating, of trusting. As we are preparing to make our return to in-person services and figure out how to create the hybrid options and make all those things that we love about church happen, I want to encourage us to embrace this I've got your back motto. There's so much for us to figure out. And it could be really easy to start feeling overwhelmed and that we have to do everything by ourselves. And when you feel that feeling coming up inside of you, remember, I've got your back. You're not alone. There's a lot of parallels that exist between the situation of being interviewed for an unknown job and returning to in-person services here at the Island School. The unknowns. How do we set up? what is now required of us, things that we might not even be able to perceive until we're in the situation. But remember how when I went into the job interview not knowing what it is I was being interviewed, through listening, through staying engaged, through not letting myself become overwhelmed, eventually the answer, the solution presented itself. I think this is what this moment has to offer us. A time to lean into trust. This is a great time for us to start asking the what if questions of each other. Or to, as I like to often talk about, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. This is our chance to be improvisers and approach things using that yes and orientation and I've got your back, using these two concepts as tools to build something new together. If we can lean into that foundation of trust that is already here, we've already shown ourselves as a community that we've got each other's back. If we can lean into that trust that exists and stay open while embracing the wonder of new possibilities, I believe we will arrive at a new understanding of what it means to be church together. A lot has changed since the arrival of COVID. And to be honest, I don't think some of it is coming back. That idea of normalcy that we knew before will probably never return fully to that. The world has changed. The church needs to change with it. And I believe that we will, and we will find what works for us, as long as we have each other's back and accept that nothing that we try to do together will be a failure, as long as we support each other. To the glory of life.
When the ground drops out from under you and there's nothing there to hold on to, no, you're not the first to fall right through to a space of mystery, a place of questioning who you are and who you're meant to be. When you can't find home where it used to be, and your roots have faded into memory, no, you're not alone in this new reality. It's a well-trod path traveled by ancestors who came before and showed the way. Throughout time, we've been pushed into the dark, called to find the light within our broken hearts and let it shine. And we can't do it on our own, gotta find our family in the unknown. And side by side we'll go by stepping stone till the journey becomes our home. Some days it feels like searching for water in the sand. Sometimes it feels like falling with nowhere to land. Yeah, there are ups and downs that'll turn you round and round. We come back to the footprints, they're all around. And throughout time, we've been pushed into the dark, called to find the light within our broken hearts and let it shine. And we can't do it on our own, gotta find our family stone till the journey becomes our home. When the walls are closing in, we find our way out through the door into a light that's so much brighter than our hearts have known before. When we heed the call to follow the voice that burns within our core, we join the ranks of seekers, wanderers, and warriors of the soul. And throughout time, we've been pushed into the dark, cold to find. Throughout time, we've been pushed into the dark, cold to find the light within our broken hearts and let it shine. And we can't do it on our own, gotta find our family in the unknown. And side by side we'll go by stepping stone till the journey becomes, yes, the journey becomes our home.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our service has ended, but our service to one another and the world begin anew. As we go forth, I encourage you to embrace the yes and possibilities that are present before us. And remember to lean into that sense of trust that we have established. May we all have each other's backs. Amen.